ABC Radio Victoria. You're with Peter Somerville for the Victorian Country Hour.
Yes, hello and a happy Friday to you. This afternoon on the Country Hour, some clarity for Victorian almond growers as Queensland apiarists will be allowed to travel south and help with pollination efforts in the coming months. However, there's still undoubtedly some concern for those organising events and planning to travel to those events. There's quite a few coming up in ag. Today you'll hear from the organisers of Bendigo's Sheep Show about their plans. Also today, we delve a little deeper into the change in tone from China that we were discussing yesterday. China has admitted it singled out Australia for economic punishment, plus a whole lot more. Do stick around. And of course, get in touch if you'd like to chip in. 0467 842 722, the number to send me a text, or 1300 295 222 if you'd prefer to pick up the phone. But first today, if you were listening to the Country Hour yesterday, you might recall that we got a text from Fred in Werrimal asking when the rain is coming for northwest Victoria. Well, Fred, if you're listening today on the program, we might just have some answers for you because the Bureau of Meteorology issues long-range rainfall forecasts. So we thought today would be a good chance to bring you up to speed with what's in store there. Here's climatologist Jonathan Pollock.
Well, chances for above-average rainfall are looking good. So most of the eastern two-thirds of Australia has high chances of above-average rainfall during August to October. And those high chances extend into northern Victoria, but the chances gradually reduce towards the south and southeast. So much of the Otways and Gippsland have a neutral rainfall outlook, but most places north of Horsham have a greater than 80% chance of above average rainfall during August to October.
So it's really, if we're talking about the northwest, it's really quite dry there at the moment. How long will farmers in that part of the world be waiting for this rain? How far ahead are we talking?
We're looking at those 3 months from August through to October.
But until then, the chances are average.
No parts of the state have got an increased chance of above average rainfall during July as well.
So what's driving this outlook?
Well, large parts of the eastern Indian Ocean are warmer than average, and a negative Indian Ocean dipole event is looking likely. And both those things favour above average winter-spring rainfall for parts of Australia.
And so can we put any numbers on this yet? Do we know just how far above average it could be?
No, the outlook doesn't tell us how much more than average we're likely to receive. It can give us some guidance about specific values, the chances of receiving certain amounts, but the outlook we're looking at the moment really tells us which areas are likely to be above average, not so much how much above average.
Where can farmers find out more about this?
Yeah, you can get more detailed information about outlook scenarios or the chances of getting specific amounts of rainfall on the Bureau's website.
And how often is that updated? How often should they be checking back?
The 1 month and the 3 month outlooks are updated every Thursday, and we update the weekly outlooks as well on Mondays and Thursdays.
Jonathan Pollock from the Bureau of Meteorology there with an update for Fred in Werrimal who sent us a text yesterday. It's quite dry, of course, in that part of the world at the moment, but just to recap there, most places north of Horsham have a greater than 80% chance of above average rainfall during August to October. So I hope that brings you a little bit of hope. But just what does that forecast mean for farmers on the ground in that part of Victoria? Andrew Kay farms at Moringa, and we last heard from him on the Country Hour about a month ago when he was redistributing road train loads of donated hay to his neighbours. He hadn't sown a crop and he was waiting for rain, but Andrew has now sown a fraction of the 2,500 acres that he normally crops. Let's hear what he makes of the Bureau's forecast.
We've planted about 300 acres of barley, mainly just for an income if we do get a rain. It looks like there may be a little bit of rain late next week, but it doesn't really still look very promising around this area at all.
When you say a little bit, what are we talking?
Oh, there's a chance of up to about 10 mil, which is really a drop in the ocean to what we really need around here.
And the 300 acres of barley that you've planted, I imagine that you could apply that there as well, a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, that's right. It is. Normally I crop around about 2,500 acres every year. And we've just sort of put in a couple of paddocks just on the off chance we do get something that comes our way. But at this point in time, a lot of people that have finished cropping are really screaming right now for rain.
The Bureau of Meteorology on the Country Hour this afternoon is telling us that the chances are relatively good for above average rainfall in the next couple of months. What do you make of that? At what point will it change your decision making?
Oh, well, we really needed a good inch to an inch and a half of rain. We've had very minimal rain. I think we've had about probably 30 mil this year, 35 mil this year to the state. Normally we're up, around 100 mil. But the last 3 to 4 years has been very, very hard. Rainfall just seems to bypass us every time.
If you do get above average rainfall over the next 3 or 4 months, is that enough to get ahead?
Oh, for some it would be. I'm not I didn't want to go in too hard this year because it's looking and shaping up the way it was 2 years ago where we had very minimal rainfall and crops sort of come up and then they went back again. So I've sort of held off. I didn't want to put it in and take the big risk with the way the prices are of fertiliser and everything else. It's just one thing I didn't really want to do this year.
From speaking with your neighbours and other people in your part of the world, is that the approach that a lot are taking up there?
Oh, some have gone in and put crop the whole farm, and now they're worrying. I think it's just one of those things. It's a gamble you've got to take to survive in this area at the moment. But it's just it's very, very hard. There's a lot of livestock starting to get sold again. People have restocked 2 years ago, and now they're starting to look like getting rid of cattle again.
Well, we really hope that rain's coming for you, and thanks for chatting with us on the Country Hour.
No, we all hope the rain's coming too. Thanks for that.
Andrew Kay there. He's a farmer at Moringa in northwest Victoria. Do get in touch with me this afternoon on the Country Hour, 0467 842 722, and let me know how things are tracking at your place. A few messages coming in from that part of the world already. Paul from Karawinna has had 6 millimetres for the month. The crops have just come out of the ground, and I'm guessing there that Paul means June, not July. There's some quite low totals in that part of the world. And Luke and Steph, hi Pete, still very dry, we'll say, in the Northern Mallee. A farmer from Patchewallock was saying the first half of this year has been drier than it was in 1982, which was the worst drought in the last 50 years. So quite a serious situation in that part of the world. 0467 842 722 if you'd like to get in touch, or of course 1300 295 222. 13 minutes past 12 on the Country Hour. One thing that would help farmers like Andrew Kay make their business decisions is better long-term climate forecasting. Tom Major spoke to Mike Funnell from the Bureau's Agriculture program, who says a new online climate program is being trialled in the Mallee and Sunraysia.
Yeah, look, some of the best feedback on our website is that there is so much information to dive into, but likewise there is an acknowledgement that it isn't always easy to find what you're looking for when you're looking for it. This product is really about pulling out the key and relevant information and making it in an easy to understand and interactive sort of dashboard.
And just what are you hearing so far?
It's become really clear that most producers are interested in better understanding the climate risk in the regions they operate in. The best way to start that process is being able to really clearly see what that climate looks like. Well, where are the trends? What's changing? What are some of the predictions? And does that mean anything for your business? Like, does that, force the conversation? Does that bring extra elements into the planning process? We're excited that the prototype's up and running, and we feel that it will give producers the opportunity to give us some feedback.
What are some of the stories you've already heard from farmers or graziers about how they're using this long-term climate forecasting to change their production and in many ways increase productivity?
Yeah, look, we had a great conversation with a beef producer in sort of southern Queensland. The feedback that they were getting from their customers were, the weight just wasn't on their product at the bull sales. But coming out of that, they made a clear decision to head south with their core breeding, seek agistment in an area that had a more reliable spring rainfall. And the end result was that when they were trucking the weaners back onto the property in southern Queensland, they had more weight. The home property could be sort of more set up for the finishing element of that job. That took a lot of effort for them to, I guess, dig deep into all those factors. And I guess that's sort of why this dashboard and the prototype, with the view of being clean and easy to use, is sort of what we're focusing on, so everybody can have that experience.
I'm speaking to Mike Funnell from the Bureau's Agriculture program, who is discussing the pilot programs of this new online platform to help farmers with long-term forecasting of climate. And Mr. Funnell, I guess the other issue is, do farmers want a separate platform for their short-term forecasting, or is this going to be solely for those long-term decisions?
But we do need to understand, where producers are going for all this key information, and I guess understand if they have the confidence that their source is a trusted source. If it transpires that it needs to be a one-stop shop, we need to sort of understand that and consider that in the build of this climate services for agriculture product.
What's the roadmap from here on? When can producers right across the country expect to have access to this platform?
Through the webinars, we'll be giving the people access to the prototype, but more broadly, there is the opportunity to jump on there, have a look, navigate your way around. There is ways of giving us feedback, and then we'll be looking to roll it out more broadly in the next 12 months.
That was Mike Funnell. He's with the Bureau of Meteorology's Agriculture program and was speaking there with Tom Major. And to register for those web sessions or to have your say on your needs as a farmer or grazier, you can jump on to the Federal Ag Department's website and type in climate services. You can also access the prototype of the website. That should be finalised this time next year. So a new tool there for some long-range forecasts for agriculture, because perhaps it seems that what's on offer already from the Bureau isn't quite up to scratch. A text here from Jono on the borderline. Why is the Bureau being so vague? I get better forecasting on my Google Weather app. Meanwhile, Tony in Swan Hill has a theory about why it's so dry. Around Mildura, there's a lot of solar farms that have been built in high concentration. Maybe they are affecting the weather patterns, suggests Tony. 0467 842 722.
The Victorian Country Hour with Peter Somerville on ABC Radio Victoria.
Well, Victorian almond growers have welcomed news that Queensland bees needed for vital pollination services won't be held up by border crossings. The Victorian government has cleared the way for Queensland apiarists to access permits to head south and pollinate the state's almond orchards. The government had planned to require COVID tests for every border crossing the beekeepers made, but after a national stakeholders meeting yesterday, they'll be granted commercial freight worker permits. Deirdre Jentsch from the Almond Board says it's a good result.
So it's really important that we have smooth passage for hives that are brought down from Queensland and also interstate from a number of states to access our almond orchards early on in the season, so that we can get a hive set up as quickly as possible and have minimal disruption on those bees as they arrive.
Because without bees, there's no almonds.
Correct, yes. Most of, if not, or majority of our almonds are actually require cross-fertilisation. So the best and most efficient way of doing that is the European honeybee, which we access from apiarists from Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia majority.
So just how was this resolved? How have you worked through this?
So we've had a working group that is meeting each week, and that includes pollination stakeholders including state jurisdictions, state apiary associations. We've got the big bee brokers there and the National Honeybee Council, as well as the almond industry, and we're all working together to make sure any issues that arise can be resolved quickly to enable the safe passage of hives and honeybees across borders, and trying to navigate the continual changing situation that COVID is presenting us at the moment. We're probably in a better place this year than we were last year, given that we don't have hard borders at the moment. So the permit system does allow apiarists to move smoothly between each state.
How important is that interstate involvement for the beekeepers? You couldn't do it with just one state.
No, well, our almond orchards are predominantly located in Victoria, but we also have a fair proportion in the Riverland, and the Riverina as well has expanded in recent times, and so as those plantings come into maturation and needing those commercial crops, we're needing more bees and hives for pollination each year.
Perhaps generally speaking, what's the demand for pollination services from the almond industry? What sort of numbers are we talking here?
Yeah, so the number of hives, it kind of depends on stocking rates for each property, but we roughly work on an average of 6 hives per hectare, and it's looking this year, like a rough estimate based on planted areas, we're looking at around 277,000 hives. So that's quite a fair proportion of hives and millions of bees.
Is it hard to find those bees? And I guess also bearing in mind that the number of almond trees planted is ever increasing, is it going to get harder to find enough?
Yeah, we're really encouraging apiarists to consider pollination as a business in its own right, if you like. A lot of apiarists have done pollination on the side to supplement their honey businesses, but the level of plantings that we've got would adequately support pollinators, apiarists that are considering looking at pollination as a business in itself.
Deirdre Jentsch, are people in the almond and pollination industries, for want of a better term, will they sleep a bit easier tonight?
Yeah, look, in the world of COVID, it really is, a world of uncertainty at the moment, but there are permits available to enable apiarists to travel through each state. So that's really good, and there is a working party of pollination stakeholders that are meeting each week. So that's been a really effective group. It was established last year, and it enables any new and arising issues to be addressed quickly so that, we can have a safe and good season for all.
Deirdre Jentsch there from the Almond Board. That change will provide multiple entries into Victoria over 14 days, allowing multiple trips to transport the 35,000 Queensland bees that will be heading down. A record 277,000 hives will be needed to pollinate almonds in the coming weeks. But aside from almond pollination, border uncertainty is also playing on the minds of the organisers of a number of ag events. The Australian Sheep and Wool Show is set to go ahead in Bendigo next week, despite interstate COVID-19 travel restrictions. But Australian Sheep Breeders Association Chief Executive Margot Falconer says exhibitor numbers may be down. She spoke with Eden Hennanen about the preparations.
It's been a really funny year because really up until about a week ago, we were never really sure we were going to have a show. And now it's starting to feel like we are going to have a show. So we've still got a lot of sheep coming, still got a lot of site holders. But of course, COVID has kicked us around a bit this week, with New South Wales remaining pretty much in lockdown.
So what will happen with interstate exhibitors? Will they be able to come?
Well, Tasmania and South Australia are able to come and go. Western Australia could come, but they would have to quarantine when they get home, so there won't be many from there. New South Wales Orange Zone, they can apply for a permit if they're sheep breeders, they'll have to have a COVID test, but we've let them all know what has to happen in order for them to come, and most of them are doing it.
Some will pull out?
Well, I think some will, because they might have to be away from the farm too long, but we're generally having very positive results from our New South Wales breeders. And, of course, many of them live in the bubble, so they don't have an issue.
Australian Sheep Breeders Association Chief Executive Margot Falconer speaking there with Eden Hennanen. It's 25 minutes past 12 on the Country Hour. The news headlines not too far away for you. Just earlier we were speaking about the weather, and Tony from Swan Hill suggesting a link between solar farms and the weather on the text line. Another text that has come through from Rod. If Tony thinks the solar farms are affecting the rainfall, he sounds like an anti-climate change conspiracy theorist. You shouldn't give credence to these people without a refuting argument. That suggestion from Rod. If you'd like to get in touch, 0467 842 722.
The Victorian Country Hour on ABC Radio Victoria.
Northern New South Wales shearer Nigel Downey was in his mid-40s when he suffered a massive heart attack. What followed from there was a raft of tests and the shocking news that he would need a heart transplant. But a robotic heart was attached to a machine kept inside a man bag, sustained him until the big day that new one arrived. He told Lara Webster that the call he was finally about to have the transplant came as a shock.
Oh, it was a bit of a surprise. It was 10:30 at night, and I was very surprised. And then I just had to wait another hour for him to confirm, that I was going down there. So it was, very surprising.
You had a few practice runs too, though, didn't you? You had sort of a couple of false calls before that final one came through.
The first one was I made it to just past Barraba, I think it was, and then it got called off. And then the second one, they actually flew me down to Sydney, and then it got called off down there because I had another problem, which was medication, caused by medication. So then I just stayed down there till they sorted that problem out, and then, come back home and waited again.
When you did get that final call, the lucky number 3, was it hard for you to believe it was happening and until you were there and you're on the table, so to speak?
No, I was pretty confident that it was going to happen, actually, because I wanted it to happen by then. It was, it'd been a long time waiting, so I was ready.
Tell me about the journey to get here. It was 3 or 4 years. Tell me about what that 3 or 4 years was like. And you essentially were carrying a heart on the outside of your body, really. Tell me about the heart in a man bag, as you call it.
Yeah, well, it was just run on batteries. There was a cord coming out of my stomach, which was obviously connected to my heart, which was connected to a machine that pumped my blood because my heart wasn't able to do it. Yeah, it had a lot of alarms on it. Fortunately, I didn't set too many alarms off. And it weighed a couple of kilos, so you just carted it around everywhere and slept with it. So when you rolled over in your sleep, you'd have to pick the bag up and roll over with it. And I couldn't lay on my left side for probably 12 months after they put the machine in my heart. But then after that, I was able to just virtually be normal, apart from carrying a bag.
It sounds like it was quite the adjustment from your life as a shearer and the days in the shearing shed.
Yeah, it was pretty well. The hardest part was mostly at night when everyone else was asleep and you're sort of awake alone thinking, and then they were the dark places. But during the day when you're around friends, it was, it was virtually normal.
What was it like at night? I mean, how did you cope, and how did you get through it when you had those thoughts when you were sitting alone?
Oh, well, I had a few good text friends, like friends on Messenger that I could talk to, a lot of the time at night. So, I mostly just message on the phone or had a chat, A lot of it is that it's probably harder for the people that loved me and were close to me than it was for me.
Tell me about the beginning of the journey. How did you end up needing this new heart? What happened?
I didn't realise, but there was a lot of heart problems in the family, which I didn't know about. But I also had a massive hole in my heart, which we didn't know about that until they put the machine in my heart. either. Yeah, and I just was working as a shearer and then just had a massive heart attack at work while I was shearing, like in the second run. So probably about 10:30. Yeah, and then, just went downhill from there. Went straight home and then just laid low for a few days. Did a couple of things, like got out and did a little bit, like a bit of horse work with my son and whatever. And then after that, I just sort of kept on not feeling good. And I was the wrong colour and everything. And then one night there, I just couldn't breathe. So I had to go to the hospital in a hurry.
Sounds very much like you pushed through things, Nigel. That was how you dealt with it in the beginning. And I know when we were speaking earlier, you said you sort of just thought it was just a part of getting older. There wasn't anything wrong with you.
Yeah, I just thought I was slowing down, but that one slowed me right down. But anyway, you just found easier ways to do things, and so you could still do the same work. We just thought I was slowing down, but yeah, I had a couple of looking back on it, a couple of little heart attacks like previous. And probably one about a month before that, which I didn't realise, where I'd have to go and wash my face every 10 or 15 minutes to freshen up while I was shearing, because I was having trouble, and then by the time you got to lunchtime, I don't know what the change was, but your body seemed to be set and nothing would be any trouble then. Like it was mostly mornings, which was the trouble.
How important is it for you to, I suppose, try and raise some awareness or make other blokes in particular aware that if you're not feeling well, just go and have it checked?
No, that's the trouble, isn't it? Most blokes are pretty stubborn. But,
yes, from my own experience too, Nigel.
Yeah, but even if you tell them, it's not necessarily they're going to go and do it. Yeah, just try to have a think and do it for yourself and for who's around you. That's what it comes down to.
That was retired Delungra shearer Nigel Downey speaking there with Lara Webster about his heart in a man bag and the journey to go and get a new heart. An important reminder there as well to not push through the pain. 28 minutes to 1 on the Country Hour. It's about time. Let's get the latest news headlines with Caitlin Bewley.
Good afternoon, Peter. A Ballarat district man has fronted court charged over the death of a road worker on the Western Highway last year. David Andrew Hastings of Lucas is charged with dangerous driving causing the death of 59-year-old Creswick man Nicholas Kennedy. He was granted bail and will return to court in September. Face masks are no longer mandatory in offices from this morning after an easing of statewide restrictions. The new rules also apply in factories and schools, but people in public-facing workplaces, including cafes, are still required to wear masks. The Mayor of Indigo Shire Council says comments made by the New South Wales Health Minister earlier this week about the current COVID-19 outbreak are concerning. In a press conference on Wednesday, Brad Hazzard warned if New South Wales can't control transmission, there could be no choice but to live with the Delta variant. Jenny O'Connor says Victorians, particularly border communities, have played their part in keeping the country safe by enduring lockdowns and hard border closures, and hopes New South Wales will do the same. Yakandanda's first community battery has been switched on. It's Victoria's first community-owned solar and battery system capable of providing clean energy to customers by collecting and storing power from solar panels. Indigo Power has also been named as one of 7 new community power hubs under the state government's climate change strategy. For more news, tune into our bulletin on the hour or on our website abc.net.au/news.
Thank you very much, Caitlin Bewley, for bringing us up to speed with the latest news headlines. Let's check what's happening on the weather front now. We'll bring in Tom Delamotte from the Bureau of Meteorology. Hi, Tom.
Good afternoon, Pete.
A pretty cold start across the state this morning.
Yeah, it was very cold, particularly across western parts of Victoria this morning. So we got down to minus 4.6 at Hopeton, minus 3.6 at Horsham, minus 3.5 at Longrenong, minus 3.2 at Canagulk, and minus 3.1 at Mortlake. So really chilly conditions through the west of the state. There was a little bit of cloud cover in the east, which kept things a touch milder, particularly through the northeast of the state. But yeah, quite a bit of frost around through western and central parts of Victoria this morning.
Yeah, down to minus 4. Is it going to be any worse over the next few days?
It does look like it should be pretty similar tomorrow morning across across the west. And as we go into the northeast, it actually looks like it'll be a colder morning tomorrow morning. So that cloud which we had overnight, it is going to break up, or it is breaking up as we go through today. And we're looking at a relatively clear night across the state. So I think we'll see temperatures through parts of Western Victoria getting down to -4 or -5 in some parts once again, and we should be back into the negatives in the northeast after being just above zero this morning. So there is likely to be some pockets of severe frost, particularly around Western Victoria tomorrow morning.
And further into the weekend, what can we expect there? Or sorry, Sunday and into next week, I should say. I've lost track of what day it is.
Yeah, so it does, overall looks like a pretty settled weekend across the state. So we do have another cold morning on the Sunday morning, starting to see the coldest temperatures transition more towards central and eastern parts of Victoria as northerly winds increase a little bit on the Sunday morning in the west. So, it does look like the coldest morning tomorrow through western parts, and then the cold more through central eastern parts on the Sunday. We will see some isolated shower activity through Gippsland, particularly East Gippsland, on the Saturday, which clears up early hours of Sunday morning. And then the first in a series of cold fronts starts to reach Western Victoria later on Sunday. So just some isolated shower activity moving across the west of the state Sunday night. Not going to be too much in that, with falls less than 2 millimetres. And then that first front sort of slides away to the southeast, but it does bring some showers across the state on the Monday, particularly southern and mountain areas. Falls up to 5 millimetres, so not a lot in it. And then it clears to the east on the Tuesday, so some lingering shower activity through eastern Victoria, in particular the northeast ranges on the Tuesday, but it does look like largely Tuesday's a dry day for much of the state with northwesterly winds. And then we're going to see some stronger fronts move through towards the end of next week, so it does look like a stronger system pushing through on the Wednesday. We should see showers right across Victoria, but the focus once again will be through southern and mountain areas. And then we stay in a sort of west to northwesterly stream on the Thursday with showery conditions ahead of another front which should move through Friday or Saturday, bringing another increase to those showers. So yeah, we do see a transition away from this sort of settled weather and cold mornings as we move into early next week, but it's probably not until Wednesday onwards that we're going to see the rainfall totals really start to pick up as those stronger fronts move through.
And it sounds like even then we shouldn't get too excited about the rain.
Yeah, it has been a bit variable in the models for how exactly those fronts are going to look towards the end of the week. I think the northeast ranges does look like it's in for falls of around 15 to 25 millimetres each day from Wednesday, but away from the ranges there, we might only be seeing falls sort of in the 5 to 10 millimetre range through southern and mountain areas Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, probably a little bit more than that on the southwest coast. So yeah, a little bit to sort of play out in terms of exactly when that heaviest rain will fall, but it does look like we're in for at least a period of fairly persistent showery weather from Wednesday onwards.
Okay, well Tom, thanks for your time and thanks for the update.
Not a problem at all.
Tom Delamotte there is a senior forecaster at the Bureau of Meteorology.
On ABC Radio Victoria, this is the Victorian Country Hour. 21 minutes to 1. It's time now to check in with Country Hour super producer Kelly Lazaro for a look at some of the rural stories that have been making news across the country this week.
Thanks, Pete. Let's head north first, where cattle prices are at record highs, interest rates are at record lows, and the property market is red hot. And there have been some recent big-ticket sales. In the Northern Territory, Wave Hill Station changed hands for more than $100 million, and in Queensland's Gulf Country, Miranda Downs sold for about $180 million. Will Rayner from Rural Bank says the median price per hectare of farmland in the Northern Territory rose by 65% last year.
We know, and if you look at the Rural Bank Farmland Values Report, that if you take a long-term view to owning agricultural land, that you've been really well served over a sustained period of time. So returns on an annualised basis north of 7% for more than 20 years. So it's a really strongly performing asset class, and it compares really quite favourably to most other asset classes out there.
To wheat now, and $954 million worth of Australian wheat was exported in May. That's almost $1 billion worth of wheat sent to international markets in just 1 month. Grain market analyst Malcolm Bartholomaeus says prices are sitting at 10-year highs.
It's a combination of both extremely high prices and a very strong tonnage, which is allowing the total value of exports out of Australia to hit these record levels.
Speed camera technology is now being used to fight weeds. Dr Mike Ashworth says the Australian Herbicide Resistance Initiative is using light detection scanners to map the surface of crops and track where weeds will pop up.
What we're actually doing here is we're actually mapping where those seeds are, where those weeds are going to be next year. Now, if we know where those weeds are going to be next year, we can do things like double, triple our seeding rate on that patch. We can apply a pre-emergent herbicide package to that patch that we normally wouldn't apply anywhere else. We could apply highly effective and very expensive herbicide options to that small patch, or we can actually just blow that patch of crop away later on in the year. So my aim is that if we can map it, we can automate the machinery that we already have to basically rain down hell on everything with every tool that we have on those weeds.
And what about mangoes in winter? The first ripe Kensington Pride mangoes of the season are being sent to market from Darwin for up to $70 a tray. The manager of Red Rich Fruits, Tim Elliott, says most sales are to high-end fruit shops.
And it's great because years ago, I can remember, we had a mango season and it started flat out and ended flat out. And people, the consumers, were never aware of the mango, didn't give them long enough to see them on the shelf. Regardless of what these guys are getting for their fruit, it's great for the whole industry because it gets mangoes in people's mind. Oh, geez, the mangoes are coming. They see them and they can smell them, and yeah, it really sets it up for a good season.
Now let's meet a country dairy vet who racks up hundreds of kilometres every week driving through Queensland's lush Mary Valley. Carl Hockey says his work is never done. Mastitis, pregnancy testing, artificial insemination and bull fertility testing all keep him busy.
I've got the best job in the world. I've got to pinch myself, so get up before the sun and see sunrises in every beautiful part of the great southeast. Probably 50 to 100 farms that I work with, and see them depending on how many preg tests they might have, a few times, some of them every sort of 4 to 6 weeks and others a couple of times a year. I say to my friends, I'm either in a cow or in a car.
Now, finally, some people collect stamps, some collect coins, but how about cattle ear tags? 5-year-old Gordon Homewood lives on a cattle station about 80 k's northeast of Mount Magnet in WA, and he started collecting ear tags. His mother, Lara Jensen, says it all started when they asked a good family friend, who's a truck driver, for some ear tags. But he did one better. He put a post on Facebook and soon people were sending tags from all over the country. Gordon told the ABC's Joe Prendergast he hopes to collect 200 of the tags.
I want to love all the states.
You want to know the brands?
Cattle states. And cattle brands.
So you want to have every cattle brand in Australia? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Well, I like it because I think it's constructive and he learns a little bit of geography in the process as well. And because quite often we'd pull out the map when a parcel arrived just to show him exactly where it came from. And yeah, it's good for them to have that awareness of Australia and what other people are doing as well. Yeah. Well, Gordon, thank you so much for showing me your ear tag collection.
Thank you, everyone, for the ear tags.
Very cute. And now that the ABC's done a story on Gordon, he might get a few more in the mail. That's it for this week's Rural Muster. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Kelly Lazaro. Gordon Homewood there. How cute is that? I wonder if we can help him out somehow. Let me know if you have any ideas. 0467 842 722. Gordon's collecting cattle ear tags. 16 to 1.
The Victorian Country Hour with Peter Somerville on ABC Radio Victoria.
Well, one of the biggest stories for agriculture in 2020 was the blow China's trade sanctions dealt to agricultural exports reliant on that market. Beijing said it targeted Australian wine and barley because they were being dumped at an unfair price. Other Australian products products were blocked at customs after Chinese officials cited problems with biosecurity or labelling. But now, a Chinese official has openly declared Beijing has singled out Australia for economic punishment, saying the federal government cannot profit from China while smearing it. Grain Producers Australia Chair Andrew Wiedemann says that China's economic power seems to be dwarfing any efforts from Australia to mend the trading relationship.
When you read the comments, they clearly align with our thoughts that that's where we were with China, because we've always seen this as being a political motivated disruption to the trade between Australia and China. And of course now we're caught up in retaliation processes through the World Trade Organisation process, which realistically at the end of the day farmers have moved on and the global market's moved on, and now reflects the way that the barley trade will continue to operate. And in time it might realise that, yep, China was wrong, but the reality is they've still got a long way to go to try and even determine that in that process. So from the point of view that we've been talking about, though, clearly the trade tensions can only be fixed at that political level. The rhetoric that's been coming out of our government towards China has not helped the situation, and unfortunately where again the agricultural sector has been caught up in it, the wine industry, the barley industry, and who knows where it might end or stop. So fingers crossed, of course, that the government realises this now, and hopefully we can change that tone between the two countries to some degree. But ultimately, China is such a big market for Australia, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us as well.
So Trade Minister Dan Tehan's been in the role for long enough now that he can exercise some power. Have you been happy with the way he's been handling China?
Well, look, a changed minister and a changed attitude certainly does help the situation. I think Dan has certainly been trying his level best to really try and engage with his counterparts in China. And so ultimately the test of time will be whether or not he can create some dialogue between the two countries, because ultimately without them at least communicating with us, we're really going to go nowhere with this trade situation between Australia and China. So it does come down to that political level. We've been saying that for more than 12 months, 2 years now, that we need to change that dialogue between the two countries and really understand where we are in world trade. I mean, they're an elephant and we're an ant, and then unfortunately that's where we're getting caught up.
Are grain growers likely to move away from China in light of these comments and China's action in the last 12 months?
Look, this is an interesting conundrum really, because we've been selling record amounts of wheat to China alternatively. So I think that as long as the balance of trade remains somewhere similar to the numbers we're seeing, hopefully other commodities can pick up where we lose, and we have to look to other markets, which we've been working on. And we've been asking government more particularly to provide industry with some financial support to start looking at alternative markets, and unfortunately that's fallen on deaf ears. So really we need to make sure that we're looking after our trade sector as other global trading partners do when they're supporting their agricultural sector right around the globe. The Australian farmer operates under a non-tariff regime, so we need to make sure that we're getting support from our government as well in terms of not being subsidised.
So what other countries are grain growers looking into? What markets are available?
Well, look, if we're looking at the cereal markets, clearly India is an opportunity for us with that massive population that they have and the opportunity to break in there. Indonesia continues to grow year on year as an opportunity. The recent agreement with Indonesia in terms of some cereal grains is certainly helping some aspects of it, but no singular market will really replace China and the volumes that they were taking, particularly in barley. So we have to look at alternative markets for the alternative grains that we grow. So where we can grow pulses, we need to look to other parts of the world that are looking to find high-protein grains to support their economy and their people in terms of their diet and their health requirements. So we're seeing a lot more people now changing over to a pulse-based diet than we've probably seen before.
That was Grain Producers Australia Chair Andrew Wiedemann speaking there with Jane McNaughton. Turning now to a part of the meat industry supply chain that we don't hear from as often on the Country Hour. About 400 Coles butchers across the country could be on the chopping block as the supermarket giant considers a switch to selling only pre-packaged meat in its stores. Matt Giorno from the Australian Meat Industry Employees Union says such a move would be devastating for Coles butchers.
Well, the ready-made meat model that Coles is proposing is that their beef will be processed at a central location and it'll come out either cryovac or gas flushed.
And when you say they'll be processed centrally, where?
No one seems to know at the moment where that central location will be. I think Coles have a couple of fingers in the pie.
How many butchers does Coles employ across Australia?
In their meat departments, they employ around 1,500 or a bit over 1,500 employees within their meat departments, and about 400 of them are butchers. This is devastating news for these butchers. Most have done their apprenticeship with Coles. A lot of these butchers have been there for 20 and 30 years, some in excess of 30 years. So this is absolutely devastating. If these people are made redundant, obviously that industry knowledge and that ability to look after customers goes with them. So I think it's a silly move by Coles, and I think their meat departments will become a shell of their former self if this does occur. Both the major retailers, both Coles and Woolworths, seem to be heading down this road, and I just think it's really contrary to what public opinion is. People want a more artisan approach to their food where there are specialists on site and be able to communicate with them, and I think it'll just be a massive boost for local butchers if Coles continue down this path, but unfortunately both major retailers have seemed to follow the same route.
Potential for a big change there. That was Matt Giorno from the Australian Meat Industry Employees Union speaking with Rebecca Livingston. In a statement, Coles says that if a decision is made to proceed with that proposal, management will work with affected team members to assess potential redeployment and retraining opportunities.
The Victorian Country Hour on ABC Radio Victoria.
Premingana is one of Tasmania's most important Aboriginal cultural sites, but 20 years ago, large sections were overrun by weeds. Fields of gorse once stood 5 metres tall, but today there's barely a trace of the weed. Lachlan Bennett headed to the property during NAIDOC Week to see how the Aboriginal community harnessed their heritage to get gorse under control.
It's a very cultural place. It's one of the last places we actually have with not a lot of European inhabitants. There's a lot of our middens and there's a lot of cultural artefacts and stuff that are still here but haven't been disrupted.
That's Pakana Ranger Brendan Lowry, and he's talking about Premingana. It's a vast tract of coastal scrub on the far northwest of Tasmania, and it has incredible cultural significance for the local Aboriginal community. But this breathtaking bushland was a very different place before it was handed back in the late 1990s.
They used to run cattle back in the day along some of the grasslands at the top here, the top end of the property. And due to that, they brought in a lot of gorse. And the gorse got to the stage, when it was not in Aboriginal hands, it got to the stage where it was 15 foot tall and it was actually impenetrable. It was probably the worst gorse I've ever seen in my life, and I've done a lot of gorse management. We're still finding stems here now that are they'd be 40 centimetres to 50 centimetres round at the base, even bigger. It's crazy, I've never seen them so big before ever.
But a lot has changed at Premingana since the property returned to Aboriginal ownership.
Well, I remember coming here 20 years ago as a young fella and looking up the side of the mountain, and it would just glow with yellow flowers, gorse flowers. But now I could nearly guarantee you would struggle to find a flower on our property. We get the odd flower, but other than that, we're pretty much weed-free.
Brendan is the latest in a long line of people who has worked hard to get this gorse under control. They started by hacking through the tangle of weeds and spraying the gorse to oblivion, but now they're using a technique more aligned with their Aboriginal heritage.
Now we've got it to the stage where it's actually small enough that we can actually use the native grasses and the native plants to our advantage. Instead of using chemicals, we do use a tiny bit of chemicals, but now we're down to trying to fix the microorganisms and the carbons in the soil. We're bringing back into our cultural burning, which has been passed down for generation to generation. So we burn the grasses, which kills all the young gorse, and then we do it in the right time of the year. nice slow cold burn. The gorse germinates because it's just warm enough, because we don't get a lot of frost down here, so it germinates, and then we burn the grasses because the grass will outcompete the gorse, so it can't photosynthesize. Then we burn the grass, which kills the gorse, and we continue the process. But in the stage of doing that, the fire actually germinates the seed. So instead of a 30-year battle, we might be able to get on top of it, of all the gorse and the gorse seed, within anywhere from 5 to 10 years.
And that's a return to some of those traditional fire practices that have been in place across Tasmania for thousands of years.
Yeah, and like the old fellas have used it, not just for, like we use it now, obviously for gorse, but we do use it for other there's invasive native species like the Acacia longfolia, which is actually a part of the same family, the Fabaceae family, the legume family, and if you plant something like that without nothing to compete with it, it's basically the same thing. It's the same with anything. If you don't have something to compete and you don't have that biodiversity, the plant will overtake it. And so our old fellas would use the fire to manage, I guess it'd be native weeds to them, because anything of too much is a weed. So they'd use that for that nice slow burning. Cultural burning's not just for eradicating plants or anything. We'd use it to heal country. So it brings the grasses back. The high acidic rainfall creates high acidic soil. So when you do a burn, it puts alkaline into the soil. So it neutralises it, gets all that nice grass growing back up nice and green. So the animals have all that, kangaroos and wallabies are not going hungry. So they've got that nice native grass to eat, so it keeps them going. So all of this here, all these grasslands here, as far as you can see over that way, and the little mountain over here, and also the big mountain there, they're all completely covered with gorse to the stage where you actually couldn't even drive through them. But as you can see here to the left, see all the beautiful, beautiful green grass?
Yeah.
That's all had a really slow, cold cultural burn on it. And then you look to the stuff here beside us, you can see how dead and unhealthy it is, this little patch here, which is due to be burnt very soon. We obviously can't burn it all at once, because if we burn it all at once, we've got no habitat, no corridors for the insects and the kangaroos and all the rest of all the animals to move through. So it's very important when you're doing cultural burns that you just don't burn everything. We've got a long way to go, but we're on the right path. That's the main thing.
And you're close to the point where you won't need to do any spraying at all. The fire techniques will just manage to land by themselves.
They will. We'll say after this next season, we'll be down to no chemical use whatsoever. We're using our cultural burning to manage the gorse. Just like I said, letting the grasses and the trees outcompete the gorse, and then continue the burning for the 5 to 10 years. And after that, we can maybe slow down a little bit on the burning and actually bring it back to the way it used to be.
That was Pekana Ranger Brendan Lowry chatting to Lachlan Bennett about how they've used fire management practices to give gorse the flick in that part of Tassie. 2 minutes to 1 on the Country Hour for the last time this week. It's this time. We're off to the markets, just the one today, Swan Hill with Jenny Kelly.
Good afternoon. More lambs came out of the Mallee this week, with 6,000 at Oyen and a similar number at Swan Hill yesterday. The markets were dearer, gaining $5 to $15 on a fortnight ago. Fedlot lambs with weight were the feature, with a lot of crossbred lambs pushing over 30 kilos carcass weight, the tops touching on 38 to 40 kilos. These lambs made from $245 to a top of $292, and on size were tracking between $7.20 to $780 a kilo for most. Heavy lambs in the 26 to 30 kilo range, mostly $220 to $260 at $7.80 to $8.50. Not many nice medium and heavy trade lambs, the best from $212 to $225 at $8.20 to $8.60. There was also some impressive fed merino lambs in good skins, which made from $225 to $270 for heavyweights, and the good trades from $190 to $220, varying from $7.50 to $8.30. Plain depends of crossbred and merino lambs, mostly $150 to $180, and buyers were still selective on lots that lacked fat cover or in untidy skins. A big run of shorn merino lambs at Swan Hill, showing little fat cover but a lot of frame size, made from $139 to $165 to feedlots and restockers. Not a lot of sheep available and prices tracked within recent ranges at $6.50 to $7.20 a kilo, putting the heavy merino and crossbreds at $200 to $252. Jenny Kelly for MLA.
Thank you very much, Jenny Kelly. They're rounding out the Country Hour for the week with that report from Swan Hill. That's about all we've got time for. Thank you for your company this week. It's been fantastic. So much has happened since that outside broadcast that we kicked the week off in Hayfield. And now, we did have a call earlier. Don't panic. Warwick Long will be back with you on Monday. Have a great one.